All right, thank you so much, Mel. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, hoping you can all see my presentation.
Looks
Hi,
good.
and thank you. Welcome to our webinar. We're so excited to have you all join us today as we dive into the incredible world of simulations in learning and development. We know you're busy, so we've packed this webinar with real-world examples to show you the power and the versatility of simulations. So throughout this session, we'll be showcasing, I think, up to 12 diverse projects, each leveraging a unique technology like virtual reality, WebXR or web-based VR experiences, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and more. We'll explore how these cutting-edge tools are being used to enhance learning, to improve performance, and drive meaningful outcomes in various industries. So before we dive in, a quick word about SweetRush. For those of you who are new to our organization, we launched in 2001 and have been fully remote since 2009. We focus on performance improvement services, which embrace custom learning solutions, extended realities, emerging technologies, staff augmentation, talent placement, and strategic consulting, all with the goal of helping our clients develop their L&D roadmaps. We're honored to receive numerous industry awards for the solutions that we develop with our amazing client partners. Over to Emily to introduce the 4 actionable strategies that we'll be presenting today.
Okay, thanks, Danny. So we're very passionate about immersive learning pedagogy and immersive learning strategy, and we're always drawing on cognitive theory and learning science, the latest in learning science, to inspire and frame our design process. In fact, we have a whole library of immersive learning strategies and features that we draw on, and we'll give you a little peek into that at the end of the session. But for now, we've selected 4 strategies that we use quite often in designing XR training experiences. So the first one is perspective taking. This involves embodying different roles, realities, and identities, usually to gain greater empathy or greater understanding. Embodied practice. So this involves physically or vocally practicing a skill or procedure via an avatar in VR. Situational awareness. So this is developing audio, visual, and spatial awareness of a 360-degree environment. And 3D visualization. This involves bridging the gap between abstract or 2D information and then actual 3D objects and realities. So we'll get into these in detail, but first, back over to Danny to talk about XR use cases.
At SweetRush, we are firm believers in the power of a blended learning approach, recognizing that different modalities excel in different contexts. For knowledge acquisition and conceptual understanding, traditional methods such as e-learning modules, videos, facilitated sessions, they all remain highly effective. However, when the learning objective shifts towards applied skills and experiential learning, that's where simulations become an invaluable tool. So we leverage simulations when learners need to master multi-step processes, complex procedures, or maybe navigate challenging scenarios. When real-world practice is risky, costly, or sometimes even impractical. And when learning requires experiencing consequences and understanding cause and effect relationships. So we've developed impactful simulations across a diverse range of use cases, from soft skills like communication and leadership to highly technical skills requiring hands-on practice. And we'll be showcasing some of these projects in the demo section shortly. So back over to you, Emily, to speak about perspective taking and introduce us to the first strategy that we'll be highlighting.
Okay, so the first strategy we'll discuss is perspective taking. So like I said earlier, this is embodying different roles, realities, and identities to gain empathy or greater understanding. So this strategy is based off the theory that learning is amplified by the recognition or the consideration and contemplation of the diversity of perspectives in a given learning environment. And that's based off of theories like sociocultural theory or transformational learning theory, if you want to look those up. Great examples for this strategy include things like customer or stakeholder empathy training. So you could imagine things like sales training where a learner takes on the perspective of a customer, leadership or DEI training, soft skills training, maybe rehearsing difficult conversations, or we're taking some liberties here, but you could stretch the strategy to the value of taking on the perspective of a thing or a system, taking on its perspective. So essentially making the learner become the thing itself to better understand how it works. And we'll show you one example of that as well. But first, we'll show you an example of that stakeholder empathy training that I mentioned. So this project for Hilton was really exciting and groundbreaking for us. And we've done actually many XR projects for Hilton since. They're now huge XR fans. It hugely eliminated the expense and logistics of shadowing and training because it let learners learn by doing and helped new hires build empathy for their colleagues using VR. So Hilton business executives, they may never have actually worked in a hotel, but they make decisions that affect their hospitality colleagues every day. So here they actually get to sweat the timer and build room trays, as you see here in the GIF on the left-hand side. In other modules, they actually get to clean rooms and handle all the complexities of the front desk. And what's also interesting on this project is that these much more immersive XR simulations were paired with a live action 360 video hotel tour, and then also some e-learning based scavenger hunt activities to really round out the learner journey and match different modalities to the nature of each learning objective. In our experience, and also research shows this too, VR is a lot more effective when situated in that kind of larger blended multimodality journey where you really match the affordances of each modality to different learning objectives. We'll go on to the next one. So this Hilton XR project, we put learners in the shoes of actual guests, so not operational staff, but putting learners in the shoes of actual guests. And the idea here was to give operational staff members empathy into what it's like to be a hotel guest who might not be receiving the best service. So they get to actually experience the frustrations of being a guest who's been traveling for hours and hours and is now stuck in the front desk queue and they want to check in, they're dying to get to their room, or a guest who served the wrong order at the restaurant, or they book the conference room for a really important meeting in the morning, but they arrive and they realize the room hasn't been set up properly to connect their laptop. So by experiencing those guest frustrations firsthand, the learners were better able to serve their guests with excellence and really understand what that means experientially and emotionally. And after this experience, 95% of learners agreed that they now had more empathy for hotel guests. You'll notice that this is a 360-degree filmed experience. So we actually sent specialized cameras to a Hilton hotel to scan the space and scan the lobby. And the scenarios were brought to life by actual professional actors. So this approach, when learners actually put the headset on, they really truly feel like they're in a Hilton hotel.
All right, so this next project is one we developed for Coursera, where we strategically embedded web-based VR experiences into several of their courses. In this case here, their Introduction to Physiology course. So imagine learning about blood pressure, not from a textbook, but by shrinking down and flying inside a blood vessel. So by actually being inside the vessel, students gain an intuitive understanding of how it expands and contracts. They can feel the changes in the flow and pressure as they manually interact with the vessel walls. So this inside-out perspective makes abstract concepts like systolic and diastolic pressure tangible and real. In a later activity, as depicted here on the right-hand side of the slide, they have an opportunity to interact with the patient and measure her blood pressure, now applying their newfound knowledge in a real-world medical scenario. So this isn't just memorization, it's knowledge built from direct immersive experience, allowing the learner to experience and take on the perspective of these physiological elements to more fully conceptualize how they work and operate. And we'll talk more about VR facilitated experiences in a later slide, but this is an example of how we can use VR in an in-person classroom or any physical learning environment, where you have different learners put on the headset and their perspective is screencast to a monitor on the wall for their peers to see. This helps to socialize the VR learning, creating a sense of camaraderie. It also builds curiosity and empathy for the challenges that the learner in the headset might be experiencing in the virtual environment, helping to bridge that gap between the otherwise solitary VR experience and the social and the real experience of the classroom. All right, so that brings us to the end of the perspective taking section. And now I'm going to hand back over to Emily to introduce us to the next strategy, which is embodied practice.
Great. Thanks, Danny. So this strategy involves physically or vocally practicing a skill or procedure via an avatar in VR. So this strategy is based off the theory that the mind is not only connected to the body, but the body actually influences the mind. So activating things like our sensory motor systems in a training experience also activates cognitive processing. Maybe in colloquial terms, we're not just brains in jars at computer screens. We're more holistic beings than that. We're more interconnected beings than that. So allowing our learners to use their bodies and use their voices along with their minds actually enhances learning. So examples and use cases for this strategy would be things like an installation or a maintenance procedure, anything that's really physical or procedural, a medical procedure like conducting a surgery, any type of vocalization content like public speaking and soft skills, and factory safety training as well. So that's relevant to the first project that we're going to share.
All right, so in this case study, we partnered with a leading global manufacturer to revitalize their safety training using the power of virtual reality. Our solution involved developing a highly realistic VR simulation that replicated their factory environment, complete with 360-degree digital twins of their facilities and interactive 3D models of their equipment. Learners can interact with this virtual world, performing tasks, manipulating objects, and experiencing the consequences of their actions in a safe setting. So this project really highlights how VR can transform safety training from a passive, compliance-driven activity into an engaging and impactful experience that drives real behavior change and encourages a stronger safety culture.
Okay. So we enhanced for Coursera, a very popular public speaking course, with this really powerful immersive learning experience where learners actually physically and vocally practice their speeches via an avatar in a VR setting. So you're in a realistic auditorium or a conference room. You even experience a restless or a calm audience. In fact, the learner gets to choose between all four of those parameters: an auditorium, a conference room, a restless, or a calm audience. So you really get to customize your experience. And the learners receive live feedback on their pace, so their sort of rhythm of speech, their pace, their tone and sentiment, their gestures as well, and their gaze distribution. So that means, are they evenly sort of distributing their gaze throughout the audience, through all sort of quadrants of the audience? That we track that as well. And then they get coaching tips in the moment. They can also choose that too if they want to get the coaching tips in the moment or at the end from the professor of the course. That's really personalized to their performance and how they're doing in terms of all those parameters I mentioned. So then by comparing their VR speeches at the start and then at the end of the training, they can really tangibly see their improvement and build self-awareness, obviously really important for public speaking technique, and confidence in their public speaking ability and their personality as well.
So this next project is one of my recent favorites because it sits so perfectly at the intersection of three very powerful technologies for learning: VR, AI, and voice recognition technology. Everyone is aware that AI agents are a new and powerful tool in the L&D space, but there are a lot of challenges and nuances in getting it right. So here, in partnership with a global food and beverage company, we created an immersive conversation simulation where company leaders are able to practice their human-centric coaching skills. Learners use their own voices and their own words to engage in authentic back-and-forth dialogue with real-time animated avatars. This eliminates the limitations of multiple choice prompts or canned responses, forcing learners to rely on their instinctive coaching abilities. This approach creates a level of realism and engagement that traditional training simply can't match. It's about capturing the nuances of human interaction in a virtual space. The learning experience is further enhanced by AI-driven feedback. So the AI engine analyzes the learner's spoken responses, recognizing their intent, word choice, and even their tone of voice. This is crucial because, as we all know, how something is said is often just as important as what is said. The AI then delivers highly personalized guidance tailored to the individual learner's performance. This feedback is immediate, specific, and actionable, allowing leaders to quickly identify areas for improvement and refine their coaching techniques. The simulation was grounded in the GROW coaching methodology, which is a widely respected framework for effective coaching. So here, learners are able to practice this GROW model, which is goal, reality, options, and way forward, with the avatars, gaining proficiency in a proven coaching approach. By practicing the GROW model in this virtual setting, leaders can develop a deeper understanding of its principles and how to apply them in a really human-centric way. So this project represents a significant evolution on the branching simulation. It moves beyond predetermined paths to create a truly dynamic and responsive learning experience. And as L&D professionals, we see this as an incredibly exciting development. It's a glimpse into the future of immersive training and its potential to transform leadership development. In this next example for Hilton, we are creating a series of upwards of 20 immersive scenarios in which learners can flex their problem resolution muscles. So take a moment and imagine that you are working at a hotel and a guest comes to you with a problem. It can be challenging to know what to do in real time, particularly when a guest is unhappy. In this experience, learners have the opportunity to put their guest resolution skills to the test and authentically engage with hotel guest avatars. Voice detection technology allows learners to interact with avatars using their own voices and their own words. So similar to the previous example, there are no multiple choice options or canned responses, only the learner's intuition. And this creates realistic and authentic scenarios that encourage deep practice. An AI feedback tool delivers personalized guidance to each and every learner based on their individual responses. This project was built using WebXR technology, which offers learners the choice to engage with the training in VR for a fully immersive experience or on their desktop computers. This accessibility is so powerful for learning, as it ensures that all learners can participate and benefit from the simulation, regardless of what devices they have available to them. And to demo this project and give you a sense of how it plays out in practice, here is a quick 2-minute video of a user going through one of the scenarios on a desktop computer.
I have to do something about the air conditioning unit in my room. It rattled all night. I tried adjusting the temperature, changing the fan setting, nothing. I didn't get any sleep.
Ms. Cato is very unhappy and exhausted. What will you say to her?
I hear you that the air conditioning and fan were running in your room all night. I understand how frustrating this must be because, of course, you're expecting to have a good night's sleep in our hotel. I sincerely apologize that this happened. I'm very sorry. I'd love to make this right for you. Can I offer you a free voucher for the restaurant to dine with us today? And I'll also send technical support up to your room, maintenance up to your room right away to fix the issue. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. I really appreciate it.
You did a good job hearing the guest's problem by repeating it back to them. You showed empathy by acknowledging the guest's frustration over the lack of sleep. You apologized sincerely for the inconvenience caused. Do not offer free vouchers or discounts greater than 50% off. Focus on resolving the issue by sending maintenance and ensuring the guest is moved to a new room. You thanked the guest appropriately for bringing this issue to your attention.
Right. So on that note, I wanted to share a little bit more about WebXR and this technology that we use. So one of the key focus areas for our XR team has been to make VR training more accessible and practical for organizations. We've achieved this through WebXR technology, which allows us to create simulations like that Hilton one that we just demoed that can be accessed on both desktop computers and VR headsets. This dual modality delivery provides incredible flexibility and scalability. Learners with VR headsets can enjoy the fully immersive version of the experience, while those without can still access the engaging training on their desktop computers. We've also developed an LMS integration tool that enables learners to launch these simulations directly from their organization's LMS. Ultimately, the technology allows us to create immersive and adaptive learning experiences that are scalable across the entire enterprise, catering to diverse needs and learning styles. We believe this combination of WebXR technology and LMS integration represents a significant step forward in making VR training more practical, accessible, and impactful for organizations of all sizes. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Emily to introduce us to the third strategy here, which is situational awareness.
Okay, so situational awareness involves the development of audio, visual, and spatial awareness of a 360-degree environment. So you could think about content where it's important for the learner to develop sensorial, think about the five senses, sensorial awareness, and spatial or volumetric awareness of a 360-degree environment. So this strategy is based off the theory that knowing is inseparable from actually doing something in a 360 context. That's called situated cognition. So situating learners in simulated versions of the end social, cultural, and physical context they'll ultimately work in or perform in, activating their senses, heightening their attention in that context, enhances learning and ultimately knowledge transfer. So examples for this one include any type of sensorially charged situational training like safety training for a factory or a construction site, hospital training, emergency or hazardous zone training, or flight and driving simulations, which relates to our next project we'll share. So this is a very dynamic and immersive safety training experience we developed for a rideshare platform. Learners drive a virtual motorcycle and they have 180-degree view. They have a 180-degree view. Not 360, of course, because you wouldn't be looking behind yourself while you're driving. So they look around in their periphery and they identify risks on the fly, things like birds coming into view, pedestrians, road obstructions. They're conditioning their situational awareness with those sensory cues so they have the opportunity to react and mitigate those risks in real time in the simulation. This experience involves some really beautiful animations you can see here, very hyper-realistic visuals, and went out to a global audience, but was also personalized in that the learners had a chance to choose between left-hand drive or right-hand drive vehicle to better match their unique needs and their physical orientation.
In this next case study, which focuses on a global organization that needed to effectively train its frontline leaders on crucial safety protocols and hazard identification. So in this simulation, frontline leaders are put to the test as they explore a 360-degree warehouse space and identify and address safety hazards, risks, and any unsafe acts that could put their teams in harm's way. SweetRush 3D technical artists designed this space based off of images and videos of a working warehouse facility, ensuring a highly realistic and relatable learning experience. Within this environment, learners encounter interactive scenarios that challenge them to identify and address various safety hazards while applying the organization's REAL framework, which is recognize, evaluate, align, and lead, to guide their decision-making. As with many of our projects, the simulation component forms part of a blended learning journey, including e-learning modules and videos. And given the flexible and custom nature of our work, we can design these experiences either as standalone components that can be directly integrated with an LMS, or they can be embedded within an articulate storyline course, for example, depending on what makes the most sense for the learner journey and your delivery goals. In this next case study, we partnered with a leading tire manufacturer to develop a cutting-edge web-based simulation for their third-party sales associates. So this company has a robust library of training content covering various aspects of tire knowledge, sales techniques, and customer service. However, they recognized a need to help their sales associates connect these individual skills and apply them in a holistic real-world context. Within this virtual store, learners can engage in a variety of activities that mirror real-world tasks, such as interacting with virtual customer avatars to practice their selling skills, conducting thorough vehicle inspections, and even performing tire installations. What makes me most excited about this project is how it guides learners on a complete journey. They start with foundational knowledge, then build upon it with individual skills, and then finally in this simulation, they get to put it all together and experience the magic of seeing those skills come to life. So by providing these realistic scenarios and hands-on experiences in a risk-free environment, the simulation empowers sales associates to apply their knowledge, refine their skills, build their confidence, and ultimately deliver exceptional customer service when facing actual customers. All right, and back over to Emily to introduce our final strategy for today's presentation, which is 3D visualization.
Okay, so 3D visualization allows us to bridge the gap between abstract or 2D information and then actual 3D objects and environments. So this is based off a few theories, but one interesting one I think is that building knowledge occurs best or occurs well through interacting with and creating things that are tangible and shareable. And that's called constructionism, if you want to get more context on that one. Then, of course, more obviously, we don't really need a theory to understand this. We need 3D objects to understand 3D phenomena, things like spatial relationships or dynamic movements inside a system or dynamic movements of a system. So examples to apply this strategy might involve an architectural model, a 3D architectural model, a 3D product model, or a physiological model for a nurse or physician, which relates to our next case study. So this was a very exciting project for us, actually, because most of our XR projects are accessed asynchronously and remotely by learners that are in various locations, decentralized. And this one was totally live and in person. And on top of that was also a really perfect use case for VR. So the challenge was around finding an engaging way for physicians to practice electrocardiogram interpretation, again, 2D abstract information, to better understand cardiac anatomy at this annual conference that's held here. So we developed a multi-user VR experience. Everyone in that room you can see is sharing the same experience of these dynamic visualizations of how electricity propagates through a heart in 3D, a volumetric 3D heart, which they don't often get to see. And there's a facilitator-controlled 3D heart model that allowed for more guided explorations and discussions. So the facilitator had a lot more agency with that 3D model for the demonstrations and to enhance the learning and the discussion and the activity. It was also very rapid development. We had just 2 months, and we provided on-site support at the event to make sure everything ran smoothly as well.
Okay, so to showcase the power of augmented reality, which we haven't given enough of a spotlight to in this presentation, and we wanted to make sure that we touched on it here. We're going to explore this project, which we completed for our global tire manufacturer partner. So we often take tires for granted, but they truly are technological marvels, carefully engineered with intricate layers and advanced compounds to keep us safe on the road. To highlight these often unseen features, we created an interactive AR experience that brought their latest tire to life, allowing customers and sales associates to explore its safety and performance features in a whole new way. So imagine a product poster displayed in tire dealerships. By scanning this poster with mobile devices, users could activate an AR overlay that showcased a 3D model of the tire. They could then peel away its layers, revealing the details and technologies that contribute to its superior safety and performance. And this final case study that I will show today is another augmented reality example. It's a card game that we created for Hilton. And I think it's such a creative way to apply AR to a soft skills use case. The card game uses AR to help team members identify the right time to ask guests, "How is your stay?" and to explore opportunities to make it right by using the hard problem resolution model, or by creating a moment of surprise and delight. So using a mobile device or tablet, team members engage with scenarios where they must decide if it's an appropriate time to ask their guest how is their stay, based on visual cues from the guest's avatar. The game progresses with team members making additional decisions depending on the guest's reaction to the question, offering opportunities for problem resolution or surprising and delighting the guest. This AR card game demonstrates the versatility of immersive technologies. In addition to achieving its core learning objectives, it also served as a highly engaging activity for conferences and in-person training, encouraging collaboration and excitement among participants. And to wrap up this presentation, Emily will share a little bit more about our tools and resources for designing immersive learning projects.
Great. So this is a really exciting resource that we've been building called the Immersive Learning Design Library. It's an internal design tool and also SweetRush knowledge base that we use to support building immersive experiences in research and evidence-based ways. So we devise and we catalog and we source immersive learning strategies based off of a lot of the theories that I talked about too, all similar to the 4 that we presented. And we map those to different types of learning and performance objectives. And then features as well, which are the technologies and functionalities to support those strategies. So we can go to the next slide. This involves embodied practice, which is one of the 4 strategies we talked about. You imagine an installation procedure. Let's say we've analyzed the content. We've determined it's physical and procedural related. Safety is also really important. And we decide that embodied practice is one of the most important strategies to deploy here. And the features to support that kind of strategy may be hand agency. So maybe we need to involve a greater manual flexibility for the learner, not just point and click with a mouse with the left and right click to manipulate a tool, but actually allowing the learner to have agency with a haptic glove, for instance. Maybe we decide body tracking is really important to look at their posture and their position and their location for safety purposes and tracking safety practices. Maybe haptic feedback is really important. There's a whole language of buzzes that maybe we create on the hand controllers that have different meanings. So those aren't the only features to support that embodied practice strategy, but they may be the right ones for this project in the scenario that's around safe installation procedures.
All right, so in closing, let's recap the key takeaways from today's session. So we've explored a variety of simulation projects showcasing the versatility and impact of this powerful learning tool. So remember, simulations are most effective when learners need to master complex processes or procedures or navigate challenging scenarios, when real-world practice is risky, costly, or impractical, and when learning requires experiencing consequences and understanding cause and effect relationships. We encourage you to consider how simulations can enhance your own L&D initiatives. And if you're looking for a partner to help you leverage the power of simulations, we are here to support you. We have the expertise and the passion to create engaging, effective, and innovative learning experiences that drive results. And that brings us to the end of our time today. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope that this webinar has inspired you as you think about your own use cases. And with that, I'd love to open up the floor for a few questions. And if we don't get to yours, we invite you to connect with us via LinkedIn or directly via email so that we can continue the conversation together.
All right, we do have some questions that have come in. What are some ways you are integrating AI into your simulations to enhance their effectiveness?
Sure. So Danny shared a couple of projects. I think one of the main ways so far that we're integrating AI is through voice analysis, using technologies like natural language processing. So analyzing learners' sentiment, their word choice as well, their syntax, whether they're using the correct phrases and words based off a particular behavioral model, analyzing their intent, their tone of voice, their sentiment, I think I mentioned. So projects like the Hilton project Danny shared, and Pepsi. But we're also now creating a lot of different AI models for different learning and performance purposes, different learning objectives and business objectives, like coaches to encourage reflection and metacognitive skills, evaluators that give automatic feedback and automatic scoring, assimilators which look at patterns of behavior and patterns of performance of learners in a group, or even assimilating knowledge from the group to create connections, maybe around similar questions or queries that that learners have in a chat bot, building connections, curators as well. So using AI to create personalized pathways with machine learning in the moment based off of preferences or performance or roles. So you can imagine those as different AI L&D products that we've been developing that have different pedagogical functions and also different levels of complexity, so that we can really tailor the AI solution and features and functionalities to each client's unique needs. Yeah, so those are some ways.
Wonderful. Thank you. Can you tell us about any other immersive learning strategies, even if it's just at a high level?
Yes, there's one that we haven't gotten to use on a project, but I'm really excited to. We're calling it something like immersive data navigation and data visualization. So it has to do with the idea that spatializing information in 360, even if it's something like an org chart of an organization or a business, actually helps memorization and helps retention, because you're activating the learner's vestibular system and their sensory motor system we talked about earlier. And maybe a more familiar concept that some of you might remember is the idea of a memory palace, and how if you sort of map information to 360 degrees, you can remember it better. Like if you want to memorize the presidents, George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson are in your front hallway, and then the next 3 presidents are in your living room, and the next 3 are in your kitchen, depending on the spatial layout of your home. And if you use that, then you will memorize all the presidents in a row. So we'd really like the opportunity to deploy that strategy and see if we can actually, not just condition a physical procedural skill or some of the more, naturally understood use cases we explained today, but actually spatializing information in 360 to help with memorization and retention of knowledge itself. And I could share some studies on that there was a bunch that came out in 2021 if you're interested. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How many customers are requesting web XR versions of their VR experiences? You might have to maybe explain the difference between like regular VR and web
Yes.
XR.
Okay, so a native VR application is a VR experience that is designed specifically for a VR headset. And so a learner would need a VR headset in order to access that experience. WebXR, or a web-based VR experience, essentially, is an experience that we design that has this dual functionality. So learners can either access it on a VR headset if they have one, or they can access it on their desktop computers if they don't. So it allows for that optionality, but also for scalability. So organizations can invest in immersive experiences, knowing that their learners will be able to access the experiences with or without a headset. So that's really powerful. In terms of the question around how many customers, I think you asked, are requesting web-based versions of these experiences, I would say that most clients are requesting the VR version as an add-on to their desktop simulations. So what's interesting about WebXR technology is that we only create one version of the project that is then accessible across both desktop computers and VR headset. So there's not much added work effort in creating a VR version, essentially. So this makes it really easy to scale the experience, as I mentioned, across a wider audience, while offering learners that device optionality.
This next question, I know you had mentioned about embedding into like storylines. So this is more, are you able to create immersive experiences and then embed them into more traditional courses?
Yes, absolutely. So, again, given the custom nature of our work, we're pretty flexible when it comes to the output of these simulations. So we can SCORM wrap them and then embed them as a component into more traditional authoring tools, like, as you mentioned, Articulate Storyline. Or they can be integrated directly with an LMS where learners can access them as a standalone component, just like they would an e-learning module or a video, for example. So we would work with our customers to really understand what their technology ecosystem looks like and what makes the most sense for integrating the simulation into various different learner journeys and how we can make them the most accessible to learners.
And I think sort of to add on to that, why do these VR experiences work best in the context of a more blended journey?
Yeah, so I think I can answer that. There's a lot of research to support VR enhancing engagement with the content and engagement with subject matter. And sometimes that's enough of a reason to use it. You know, we often will analyze our clients' learning objectives, but also their engagement objectives, because maybe that's really important to them, is just engaging learners with the content, not, you know, maybe just as important as the knowledge retention or the skill development. But in order to really create knowledge transfer and develop those skills, usually VR does need to be paired with some sort of pre-training to at least establish those foundational principles, foundational concepts that then get somehow behaviorally enacted in VR. So you might imagine maybe a complex surgery, you have to understand anatomical structures, you have to understand anatomical processes and procedures before you can actually perform the surgery. So getting those foundational concepts before integrating them into some sort of behavioral model and practice. So yeah, definitely great to create engagement, and often even on its own for expert learners can be good for knowledge transfer, but generally needs to be integrated into a blended learning to be effective. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between live action for VR compared to digital environments for VR?
Yeah, I can take that one. So if you think back to the first strategy that we presented, where Emily showcased those two different Hilton examples, there was the one where you had the tray exercise, where leaders were practicing various different operational roles. So that one was built using digital environments. And then there was the other experience where we put learners in the shoes of guests. And that one was a live action experience where we filmed it with a specialized camera and we brought the scenarios to life using actors, professional actors. And so it really comes down to the learning objective at hand in terms of how we make these decisions. So live action VR is it's really powerful at creating realism and emotional connection because you're using real people and places. So this is perfect when you need a grounded human context, but it can sometimes limit interactivity. On the other hand, digital or computer-generated environments offer incredible flexibility and interactivity. So here, learners can manipulate objects and experience scenarios that might be impossible to film in the real world. So think of maybe that machine safety example where learners could open valves, turn knobs, see the consequences of their mistakes. That level of detailed interaction wouldn't be feasible with live action. So really, the learning objectives will help to guide the design choices here. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Yes. And what headsets do you design for or recommend?
Okay, so when we think about WebXR or web-based VR experiences as we describe them, it allows us to create an experience that is accessible on a range of VR headsets, giving learners more options. Popular choices include the MetaQuest, Pico Neo, Both of these offer a great balance of price and performance. For more advanced VR applications, we might recommend higher-end headsets with specific features tailored to the learning objectives. Ultimately, we guide our clients to select the headset that best aligns with their needs, their budget, and of course, the desired level of immersion for the experience.
Okay. I do have a few more questions if you still have the time, or if you'd like to wrap up.
I see one here. I see one in the chat around, does it require much additional time from subject matter experts? And I would say it's a very collaborative experience. So we would work together with subject matter experts every step of the way to make sure that the content is correct, the scenarios are correct, and that the content is coming to life in a way that is relatable to learners. So if you think about all of the different simulations that we presented today, from the physiology to the ECG example of the heart, a lot of those are highly complex topic areas where we would lean on subject matter experts to help us, to help us make sure that whatever we're bringing to life in the simulation is 100% accurate and resonates with learners. So we see ourselves as experts in learning design, and then we work very closely with our customers and our partners to make sure that we are translating their content and bringing it to life in a way that is impactful for learners and memorable for learners. So yes, we work closely with subject matter experts and stakeholders from the client side every step of the way. Mel, I'm trying to see if there are any other questions that might have slipped through the cracks. I'm going through the chat here as well.
I think this is one that's,
Mhm.
I did post them all in there for you, a couple of ones, but I think you can answer this one because we get this a lot anytime there's technology involved. What are some platforms or technology that you're using to develop these?
Okay. It depends on what we're building. So we're technology agnostic, which gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we create. So whether that's e-learning, we would typically use something like Articulate Storyline or Adapt, which is more of an HTML5 tool. If we're building a native VR application, we would probably use the Unity game engine. If we're developing web-based VR experiences or 360 simulations accessible on desktop, we would use another game engine called Play Canvas. So it really depends on what we're creating, and also on the tech ecosystem of our of the organization that we're building for. So we want to make sure that whatever output we're creating can integrate with their ecosystem as well. So yeah, that's just a snapshot. But oftentimes for these kinds of simulations, it's a game engine of sorts because we want it to be incredibly immersive and realistic.
So in that sense, is there any suggestions of maybe of a smaller budget? How, is there some low-hanging fruit or something that gets you started in this, for the one-person shops or the smaller budgets? Do you have any recommendations?
Yes, I think so the ones that we've shown, of course, are highly custom. So we've created environments specific to different organizations and we've animated avatars and things like that. But the way, the rate that technology is evolving now, we're seeing incredible tools where you can create immersive environments, you can animate avatars. Like AI is just really pushing the boundaries and continuing to bring the cost down in terms of how these experiences are being created. So absolutely, I would say lean into AI if that's something, if you're wanting to bring costs down. I'd also leverage existing assets on TurboSquid, for example, so existing 3D assets and 3D or 360-degree environments. So the more you can leverage existing assets, the more you can bring costs down as well.
There was just one more. I don't know if you want to tackle it or not about just anything around, have you had clients kind of encountering what they're calling cyber sickness? Using the, maybe people that are in the headsets and it's a little overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Emily, you answer that question really well around nausea in the headset or motion sickness.
Yep. Yeah, I have a whole list of different tips, but definitely limiting the amount of time that the learner's in the headset to begin with, maybe just a few minutes. So if you could sort of design the whole program or work with your partner to design the program to be incremental, so you're graduating their time in the headset each time they go in. Also just being really mindful of acceleration, sometimes even though it's not natural, allowing them to move to different hotspots or teleport or jump from context to context is better than having them actually, zoom there, walk there. So taking advantage of the ability to sort of teleport between contexts is helpful in eliminating that motion sickness. But yeah, those are 2 tips. We could send more if you're interested. Yeah.
Well, that was the last of the questions. If you want to close out with any final comments or thoughts.
Okay, perfect. And I know that what we typically do after a webinar is we usually compile all of the questions and we put out an article answering all of those questions again. So look out for that. But thank you for joining us today. I know we powered through so many different examples. I hope that we inspired you. I hope that we got most of your questions answered. And we do encourage you to reach out. We love brainstorming the possibilities and exploring how we can use different kinds of technologies to elevate learning, to make learning more impactful, more memorable. So I hope to have an opportunity to connect with you, and feel free to reach out.